At the family lunch, my daughter shouted, "You've always been a burden. Get out of our lives." I quietly cried as she threw my clothes onto the sidewalk. The following week, she received a copy of my will. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The sound of silverware clinking against china filled the dining room as we sat around the table for our monthly Sunday lunch. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating, like storm clouds gathering. My daughter Bella hadn't looked me in the eyes since I arrived, focusing instead on rearranging the food on her plate. Her husband Franklin sat quietly beside her, his gaze fixed on his meal. "The potatoes are a bit undercooked," Bella muttered, pushing them to the side of her plate. "I'm sorry, dear. I can heat them up more if you'd like," I offered, already half rising from my chair. "Don't bother," she snapped. "Just sit down, Mom." I sank back into my seat, the familiar weight of disappointment settling in my chest. At 66, I'd grown accustomed to walking on eggshells around my only daughter, but lately things had been getting worse. "How's the book club going, Rose?" Franklin asked, attempting to break the uncomfortable silence. Before I could answer, Bella cut in. "Mom's book club is the least of our concerns right now." I took a small sip of water, trying to steady my hands. "Is everything all right, Bella?" She slammed her fork down, making me flinch. "No, everything is not all right. Franklin and I have been talking and we've made a decision." Franklin shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his eyes still avoiding mine. "We can't do this anymore," Bella continued, her voice rising. "Having you here, constantly needing help, taking up space in our lives. It's too much." My heart began to race. "I don't understand, sweetheart. What are you saying?" "I'm saying you need to find somewhere else to live. We're done." The words hit me like a physical blow. "But this is my house, the one I've lived in for 30 years. Actually," Bella's voice turned cold. "Since Dad died, the house has been in my name. Remember? You signed it over to simplify things when you turned 60. I remembered. After Henry died, I'd been so lost, so trusting. Bella had suggested putting the house in her name would protect me if I ever needed nursing care. "It's just a legal formality, Mom," she'd assured me. "Nothing will change." "You've been nothing but a burden," Bella said, standing up. "Do you know how much it costs to maintain this place? To pay for your medications? To drive you to your endless doctor appointments? I've never asked for—" "You've always been a freeloader," she interrupted. "First with Dad carrying you, and now with us." Tears burned behind my eyes. After Henry died when Bella was just 12, I'd worked 2 jobs to give her everything, including putting her through college. I'd postponed my own grief to be strong for her, sold my jewelry to pay for her first car, skipped meals when money was tight. "Bella, please," Franklin finally spoke, his voice quiet. "This isn't what we discussed." She ignored him. "I want you out by tonight." "Tonight?" I whispered. "But where will I go?" "That's not my problem," she snapped, storming out of the room. Franklin sat frozen, conflict evident on his face. "Rose, Don't," I said softly. "Please don't say anything." I stood up shakily and walked to my bedroom, the smallest one in the house, the one I'd taken after giving Bella and Franklin the master bedroom when they moved in temporarily 5 years ago after their condo flooded. 20 minutes later, I heard Bella's angry footsteps in the hallway. My bedroom door flew open. "Why aren't you packing?" she demanded. "Bella, can we please talk about this?" I pleaded. "I don't have anywhere to go." "You always had an excuse," she said, yanking open my closet door. She pulled out my clothes, armful by armful, marching them through the house. I followed her, horrified, as she threw open the front door and tossed my belongings onto the front lawn. Neighbors across the street paused to stare. "You always were a fard," she shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. Just disappear from our lives. My blouses, dresses, and slacks, modest clothes I'd kept for years, scattered across the grass and driveway. The blue dress I'd worn to Henry's funeral landed in a puddle by the curb. Franklin appeared in the doorway, pale-faced. "Bella, stop this. The neighbors—" "I don't care," she screamed. "Let them see. Let them all see what a burden she's been. I—" Stood on the porch, tears streaming silently down my face. 66 years old, and I was being thrown out like garbage. Mrs. Patterson from next door approached cautiously. "Rose, do you need help, dear?" Bella whirled on her. "Mind your own business." I placed a trembling hand on Mrs. Patterson's arm. "It's okay," I whispered, though nothing was okay. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across what used to be my home, I gathered my scattered belongings, folding each item carefully despite my arthritic hands. My entire life reduced to a few bags of clothing and personal items. Franklin helped me carry my things to my old car, speaking in hushed tones. "I'm sorry, Rose, I never wanted this. I'll talk to her once she calms down." I looked at the house where I'd raised my daughter, where Henry and I had built our life together, where his presence still lingered in the rose bushes he'd planted and the porch swing he'd built. I loved her from the moment I knew I was carrying her, I said quietly. I would have given my life for her. As I drove away, watching my home disappear in the rearview mirror, I felt something inside me break. But beneath the heartbreak, beneath the betrayal, a tiny spark flickered to life, one that would soon grow into something neither Bella nor I could have imagined. The small apartment smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. It wasn't much. A one-bedroom unit in a modest senior living complex across town. But for now, it was shelter. I sat on the edge of the twin bed, surrounded by the few possessions I'd managed to salvage from my old life. 3 days had passed since Bella had thrown me out. 3 days of crying myself to sleep, jumping at every phone ring hoping it might be her calling to apologize, of wondering where I'd gone wrong as a mother. "You've got to eat something, Rose," Margaret urged, placing a sandwich on the small dining table. My oldest friend had taken me in that first terrible night, helping me find this apartment the very next day. "I'm not hungry," I replied, though I couldn't remember my last meal. Margaret sat beside me, her weathered hand covering mine. "I've known you for 40 years, and I've never seen you like this. Talk to me." I took a shaky breath. I gave her everything, Margaret. Everything. "I know you did, honey. After Henry died, I worked so hard. 2 jobs, sometimes 3 during the holidays. I never bought myself anything new so Bella could have dance lessons and summer camp and those ridiculous designer jeans she just had to have." Margaret nodded, her eyes filled with the understanding that comes from witnessing a life unfold over decades. "And now," my voice cracked, "now she says I'm a burden." "She's wrong," Margaret said firmly. "And deep down, she knows it." I shook my head. "You didn't see her face, Margaret. There was such contempt." Margaret sighed, standing up. "Well, there's something she doesn't know, isn't there? Something that might change her tune pretty quick." I looked up sharply. "I never told anyone about that except you. Maybe it's time you did." Walking to my purse, I pulled out a worn leather portfolio and opened it on the table. Inside were financial statements, property deeds, and investment records. "Henry was always the forward thinker," I said softly, touching his signature on one of the documents. "When he was diagnosed, he knew he wouldn't see old age. The night before Henry died, he had made me promise something. 'Don't tell Bella about the land,' he'd whispered. 'Not until she's mature enough to handle it. Money changes. People, Rosie.' The land in question was 5 acres outside of town that Henry had inherited from his grandfather. When he died, it seemed worthless, just scrubby fields on the outskirts. But 15 years ago, the city began expanding in that direction. Developers built a shopping center nearby, then housing developments. The value of our little parcel skyrocketed. How much is it worth now? Margaret asked. The last offer was just over $2 million, I said quietly. Margaret whistled. And Bella has no idea. No. After Henry died, I was so focused on keeping our heads above water, on making sure Bella had everything she needed. Then when she was older, she never seemed responsible enough. She's always been impulsive with money. Like those credit cards she maxed out in college? I nodded. And the car loans. And the emergencies that always seemed to require me emptying my savings account. Margaret shook her head. So all these years, you've been living modestly, even struggling sometimes, while sitting on a fortune. It wasn't about the money, Margaret. It was about honoring Henry's wishes, about waiting until Bella was ready. And now, I closed the portfolio, a new resolve hardening within me. Now I know she never will be. That afternoon, I visited my lawyer, Thomas Edwards, who had been Henry's friend and had managed our modest affairs for years. I want to change my will, I told him after explaining what had happened. Thomas leaned back in his chair, his expression grave. I always worried about you putting the house in Bella's name, Rose. I trusted her, I said simply. My mistake. He nodded sympathetically. What changes did you have in mind? I want most of the estate to go to charitable causes, specifically organizations that help elderly people who've been abandoned by their families. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. A small portion should go to my grandson Jason's education fund, to be controlled by a trustee, not Bella. And for Bella herself. I paused. A modest amount, but with conditions. As Thomas drafted the new will, I felt a weight lifting. For years, I'd protected Bella from consequences, cleaned up her messes, forgiven her selfishness. That ended today. I'd like a copy sent to Bella, I said as I signed the documents. Not the full details, just enough to let her know there's more to her mother than she thought. Thomas raised an eyebrow. Are you sure that's wise? No, I admitted, but it's necessary. That evening, as I arranged my few belongings in the apartment, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. Mom? Bella's voice sounded different, controlled, almost sweet. I've been trying to reach you. Have you? I kept my voice neutral, though my heart raced. We need to talk. I may have overreacted the other day. Overreacted? I repeated. You threw my clothes on the lawn and told me to disappear from your life. I was stressed. You know how Franklin's business has been struggling and Jason's college applications are coming up and... What do you want, Bella? I interrupted, something I'd rarely done before. A pause. I received something from Thomas Edwards' office today. Ah, there it was. Did you? I kept my tone light. Mom, I had no idea about the property, about any of this. Why didn't you tell me? I sat down on my new bed, running my hand over the simple quilt. Would it have made a difference in how you treated me? Another pause, longer this time. Of course, it would have. You're my mother. I love you. The words should have warmed me, but they left me cold. 54 years of loving her, of putting her first, and only now, when she learned I had something she wanted, did she claim to love me back. We should discuss this in person, she continued. Why don't you come over for dinner tomorrow? Night? I'll make your favorite pot roast. I closed my eyes, picturing her face, not as it was during her tirade, but as it had been when she was 5, looking up at me with complete trust and adoration. When had that changed? When had I become just an obstacle in her path? I'll think about it, I said finally. Great. And Mom? I'm really sorry about, well, everything. We all say things we don't mean sometimes. As I hung up, Margaret's words echoed in my mind. Money changes people. Indeed it did. but perhaps not in the way Bella expected, because while my daughter thought she'd just discovered my secret, she had no idea what I was truly planning. Bella's house, my former home, looked exactly the same as I pulled into the driveway, yet everything had changed. The porch light was on, welcoming me back to a place that had cast me out just 1 week ago. I sat in my car for a few moments, gathering my strength for what lay ahead. The front door swung open before I could even knock. Bella stood there, hair perfectly styled, wearing a floral dress I'd never seen before. "Mom!" she exclaimed, her voice dripping with sweetness. "I'm so glad you came." She leaned in for a hug that I returned stiffly, noticing how she seemed to flinch at my modest apartment smell that had replaced my familiar lavender perfume. Come in," she urged, ushering me inside as if I were an honored guest, rather than the woman who had raised her in this very house. The dining room was transformed. Candles flickered on the table, good china was set out, and the aroma of pot roast, indeed my favorite, filled the air. Franklin stood awkwardly by the kitchen doorway, his expression a mixture of shame and relief. "Rose," he said quietly, stepping forward to take my coat. "It's good to see you." "Is it?" I asked simply. His eyes dropped. "Yes, it is." Bella quickly interjected, "Jason's at a friend's house studying. He'll be so disappointed he missed you." I nodded, though I suspected my 14-year-old grandson had been deliberately sent away for this performance. "Can I get you some wine, Mom?" Bella asked, already pouring a glass of the expensive red she knew I occasionally enjoyed on special. "Occasions. No, thank you," I replied. "I prefer to keep a clear head tonight." Something flashed in her eyes. Annoyance, perhaps, but her smile never faltered. "Of course. Water? Tea?" "Water is fine." We settled at the table, the silence broken only by the clinking of silverware against plates. Finally, Bella cleared her throat. "Mom, I want to apologize for what happened last week. I was under a lot of stress, and I took it out on you. It was unforgivable." I met her gaze steadily. "Yet here you are, asking for forgiveness." Franklin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "We all make mistakes," Bella continued, reaching across to touch my hand. I resisted the urge to pull away. "Families should stick together, don't you think? Is that what you thought when you threw my clothes onto the lawn?" Her smile tightened. "Mom, please, I'm trying here." "What exactly are you trying to do, Bella?" I exchanged a quick glance with Franklin. "To make things right, of course. To bring you home where you belong." "Home?" I repeated. "This stopped being my home the moment you decided I was a burden." "I didn't mean that," she insisted. "I was just. It was a momentary lapse in judgment." I took a small bite of pot roast, chewing slowly. "Thomas Edwards contacted me. He mentioned you called his office 5 times since receiving that copy of my amended will." Bella's cheeks flushed. I was concerned, that's all. Finding out about the property was such a shock. Was it the property that shocked you, or the fact that your supposedly dependent mother isn't as helpless as you thought? Her facade cracked. Slightly. "Mom, you never told me about any of this. All these years we could have what?" I interrupted. "Sold the land? Spent the money? Lived more extravagantly?" "That's not fair," she protested. "We've had financial struggles, especially with Franklin's business downturn last year." Franklin looked down at his plate. "Bella, maybe we shouldn't—" "No, Franklin," I said. "Let her continue. I'm curious about these financial struggles." Bella straightened, apparently glad for the opening. "Well, Jason's private school isn't cheap, and the house needs a new roof. And there's the pool maintenance. And my car is 4 years old." As she rattled off her list of expenses, luxuries, not necessities, I thought about my tiny apartment, about how I'd been counting pennies. To afford my arthritis medication. I see, I said when she finally paused for breath. And these struggles justified throwing your mother out onto the street? I told you I wasn't thinking clearly, she said, her patience visibly wearing thin. But now we can start fresh. You can move back in, and we can discuss the property together, as a family. There it was. The real reason for the candles, the pot roast, the apologies. Actually, I said calmly, I'm quite comfortable in my new place. But it's so small, Bella protested, and in that neighborhood. It's perfect for me. And the neighbors are kind. One of them, Grace, introduced me to a support group. Support group? Franklin asked, speaking up for the first time since we'd sat down. For elderly people who've been mistreated by their families, I explained. It's been quite eye-opening. Bella's expression darkened. You're talking about us to strangers? Airing our private business? Just sharing my experience, I said. It helps to know I'm not alone. This is ridiculous, Bella snapped, her mask of sweetness finally slipping. You're being manipulated by these people. I couldn't help but laugh. That's ironic, coming from you. Her face flushed with anger. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know about the credit card debt, Bella. The silence that followed was deafening. Franklin's head snapped up, his eyes wide with confusion. What credit card debt? He asked. Slowly. Bella shot me a warning look, but I continued calmly. The 3 cards you've been hiding from Franklin. The $27,000 you've spent over the past year on clothing, spa treatments, and that weekend trip to Vegas with your friends, the one you told Franklin was a work conference. How did you... Bella started, then caught herself. Franklin turned to his wife, his expression hardening. Is this true? I was going to tell you, she stammered. I just needed to find the right time. There's more, I said, looking directly at Franklin now. The reason Bella was so desperate to get me out of this house wasn't just about the inconvenience. She's been planning to take out a home equity loan, but couldn't do it with me still living here because of some legal complications with the property. Transfer. Franklin's face went pale. We discussed this. We agreed not to borrow against the house. Bella stood up abruptly. This is none of her business. It became my business when you made me homeless, I replied, remaining seated and calm. The perfect dinner was now in shambles. Bella's carefully constructed facade had crumbled, revealing the truth I'd known all along. That her sudden change of heart had nothing to do with remorse, and everything to do with what she thought she could get from me. As I stood to leave, I felt no triumph, only a deep sadness for what our relationship had become, and a quiet determination about what I would do next. I think we're done here, I said softly. Thank you for dinner. Franklin rose quickly. I'll walk you out, Rose. Outside, on the porch, away from Bella's ears, he spoke in a hushed tone. I didn't know about any of this. The credit cards, the loan, I swear. I believe you, I said. And I did. Franklin had always been passive, but never cruel. What happens now? He asked. I looked at the stars emerging in the evening sky, the same stars I'd pointed out to Bella when she was a child, teaching her to make wishes on the brightest ones. Now, I said, we all live with the choices we've made. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror. Franklin stood alone on the porch, watching me go, while inside, a new storm was surely brewing. I had planted the seeds of truth, and now I would let them grow. 2 weeks passed without a word from Bella or Franklin. Each day I settled more comfortably into my new life. My tiny apartment gradually became a home, a sanctuary decorated with the few precious keepsakes I'd managed to save. Henry's reading glasses, our wedding photo, the handmade ceramic bowl Bella had crafted for me in 3rd grade. Small treasures that carried the weight of memories. I just returned from my support group meeting when my phone rang. Franklin's name flashed on the screen. Rose? His voice sounded strained. Can we talk? Of course, I replied, setting down my purse. Is everything all right? He let out a humorless laugh. Not exactly. Bella and I, things have been difficult since your dinner visit. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, though I wasn't entirely surprised. Don't be. It needed to happen. He paused. I've been looking at our finances. It's worse than I thought. Much worse. I waited, letting him continue at his own pace. She's been hiding things for years, Rose. Not just credit cards. There are personal loans, online shopping accounts. She even took money from Jason's college fund. My heart sank at the mention of my grandson. How much? Nearly $8,000. She said she was borrowing it, but... He trailed off. Franklin, I'm sorry. The thing is, he continued, she's still fixated on your property. She keeps talking about what we could do with that money, how it would solve everything, as if $2 million would just vanish into her hands and disappear. I closed my eyes, Henry's warnings echoing in my mind. He'd been right all along. Rose, she's planning something. She wants to contest your new will, claiming you're not mentally competent. She's been talking to a lawyer. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. I see. I don't agree with any of this, he added quickly. That's why I'm calling. You should know what's coming. Thank you, Franklin. That's decent of you. It's the least I can do, he said quietly. After everything. After we hung up, I sat motionless for several minutes, processing what I'd learned. Then I made a call of my own, to Thomas Edwards. The following Saturday, I received a text message from Bella asking me to meet her for coffee. I chose a public place, a busy cafe downtown where the constant hum of conversation would provide both background noise and witnesses. I arrived early, selecting a table near the back with a clear view of the entrance. When Bella walked in, I barely recognized her. The carefully maintained appearance she'd presented at our dinner was gone. Her hair was pulled back hastily, dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her clothing, while still expensive, looked rumpled. Mom, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Thanks for coming. You sounded urgent, I replied. She ordered a triple espresso, her fingers tapping nervously on the table while we waited. Franklin and I are having problems, she finally said. He's being completely unreasonable. I took a sip of my tea. In what way? He's obsessing over our finances, threatening to separate our accounts. He even mentioned divorce. Her voice cracked on the last word. That must be difficult. She looked up sharply, perhaps expecting more sympathy than I'd offered. It's his fault too, you know. His business has been struggling for years. If he were more successful, we wouldn't be in this position. I studied my daughter's face, the face I'd once watched in wonder as she took her first steps, said her first words. Where had that sweet child gone? What position is that exactly? In debt, she admitted reluctantly. But everyone has debt. It's normal. Not everyone hides it from their spouse, I pointed out, or takes money from their child's education fund. Her eyes widened. He told you about that? It was temporary. I was going to put it back. With what money, Bella? She leaned forward, lowering her voice. That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. This situation with the will, the property. We can work something out, can't we? I'm your daughter, your only child. Yes, you are, I agreed, which is why your actions hurt so deeply. I've apologized for that, she exclaimed, drawing glances from nearby tables. What more do you want from me? I don't want anything from you, Bella. That's what you don't understand. She sat back, confusion crossing her features. Then why are we here? Because you asked to meet. and because I think it's time we were honest with each other." Her expression hardened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know you're planning to contest my will, to claim I'm not competent to manage my own affairs." Bella's mouth opened, then closed. For once, she seemed at a loss for words. "Franklin told you," she finally said, her voice flat. "He was concerned. He had no right." She snapped. "This is between you and me." "No, Bella, this is about you wanting my money. Money you didn't even know existed until 2 weeks ago. It's not just about money," she insisted. "It's about fairness. I'm your family. That property should stay in." "The family? And what would you do with it? Pay off your secret credit cards? Buy a new car? Take another trip to Vegas?" Her face flushed with anger. "You're being cruel." "I'm being realistic," I corrected. "Your father was right to keep this from you. You've never been responsible with money, and you've never faced consequences for your actions. So this is punishment? For what? Being human? Making mistakes?" I shook my head. "This isn't punishment, Bella. It's me finally setting boundaries. By giving away what should be my inheritance," her voice rose again, "to strangers? To causes your father and I believed in, to your son's future. And yes, a portion to you, but with conditions that will actually help you, not enable more destructive behavior." She stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over her untouched espresso. "This isn't over. You can't do this to me." "I'm not doing anything to you," I said calmly. "I'm making choices about my own property, my own money." "We'll see what a judge has to say about that," she threatened. "When they hear how you abandoned your family, how you're mentally unstable." "Sit down, Bella," I said, my voice quiet but firm. Something in my tone made her hesitate. She slowly lowered herself back into her chair. "Before you go down that path," I continued, "you should know that Thomas Edwards has been documenting everything. Your sudden change of heart after learning about the property, your hidden debts, even your plan to contest the will. I've been evaluated by 2 separate doctors who can testify to my mental competence, and your threats today are being recorded." Her face went pale. "You're bluffing." I slid my phone across the table, its screen showing an active recording. "You set me up," she whispered. "I protected myself," I corrected. "Something I should have done years ago." For a moment, Bella looked like the little girl who'd been caught stealing cookies. Scared, defensive, but beneath it all, aware that she'd done wrong. Then her expression hardened again. "You think you've won, don't you?" she said bitterly. "Fine. Keep your precious money. I don't need it. I don't need you." She stood again, grabbing her purse. "Franklin's leaving me anyway. Jason barely speaks. To me. Are you happy now? You've taken everything." As she stormed out of the cafe, leaving me alone at the table, I felt no victory, only a profound sadness. I hadn't taken anything from Bella. She had lost it all herself, piece by piece, choice by choice. Later that evening, as I sat on my small balcony watching the sunset, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Franklin. "Jason would like to see you. Is tomorrow okay?" For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps not everything was lost after all. The park bench was cool beneath me as I watched Jason throw bread to the eager ducks crowding the pond's edge. At 14, my grandson was caught in that awkward phase between boy and man. Lanky limbs he hadn't quite grown into, a voice that occasionally cracked, but eyes that held a wisdom beyond his years. Franklin sat beside me, his posture more relaxed than I'd seen in years. We'd been here for nearly an hour, the 3 of us, enjoying a simple afternoon that felt surprisingly normal despite the chaos of recent weeks. "He's missed you," Franklin said quietly, nodding toward Jason. "He was furious when he found out what happened. He shouldn't be caught in the middle of this, I replied. He isn't a little kid anymore. He sees more than we think. Franklin sighed, running a hand through his hair. Rose, I need to tell you something. I've filed for divorce. I turned to look at him, seeing the mixture of pain and relief etched on his face. Are you sure that's what you want? I asked. It's what needs to happen, he said firmly. After everything came to light, the debt, the lies, what she did to you, I realized this isn't new behavior. It's who she's always been. I just refused to see it. I nodded, thinking of all the times I'd made the same choice, turning a blind eye to Bella's manipulations because it was easier than confronting the truth. She wasn't always like this, I said softly. When she was little, she was so loving, so open-hearted. What changed her? I shook my head. I've asked myself that question 1,000 times. Maybe it was losing her father so young. Maybe it was my own fault. Perhaps I indulged her too much, trying to compensate for Henry not being there. You can't blame yourself for her choices, Rose. Can't I? I'm her mother. Jason jogged back. To us, pockets empty of bread, cheeks flushed from the autumn chill. The ducks say they want more, he announced with a grin. Tell them they've had plenty. Franklin replied, smiling at his son. We should get going anyway. Your grandmother probably has plans. Actually, I don't, I said. Would you like to come back to my apartment? It's not much, but I could make hot chocolate. Jason's face lit up. With marshmallows? Is there any other way? An hour later, my tiny apartment was filled with more laughter than it had known since I'd moved in. Jason explored every corner, admiring the few photographs I'd salvaged, asking questions about my life before he was born. Is this Grandpa? He asked, pointing to a faded picture of Henry beside our old Chevy. Yes, I said, smiling at the memory. That was taken the summer before you were born. He was so excited about becoming a grandfather. Mom never talks about him, Jason said, his expression thoughtful. She doesn't really talk about you either. It's like the family just started with her. Franklin and I exchanged glances. Your mother has her own way of looking at things, I said carefully. Jason set down the photograph. You mean she lies? Jason, Franklin warned. It's true, Dad. She lies about everything. Where she's going, who she's with, how much stuff costs. He looked at me with those wise eyes. I heard her on the phone the other day, talking to someone about contesting Grandma's will. She said she'd say whatever she needed to say to get the money. My heart ached for this child caught in the crossfire of adult problems. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Jason shrugged. I'm not a baby. I know Mom has issues. Franklin placed a hand on his son's shoulder. We're going to work through this, buddy. Things might be a little different for a while, but we'll be okay. As they prepared to leave, Jason hugged me tightly. Can I come back tomorrow? There's this science project I have to do, and Dad's terrible at that stuff. I laughed. Hey, Franklin protested, but he was smiling too. Of course you can, I told Jason. Anytime. After they left, I sat quietly, savoring the lingering warmth their presence had brought to my small space. For the first time since Bella had thrown me out, I felt a sense of peace, of possibility. The next morning, I was awakened by insistent knocking. Pulling on my robe, I opened the door to find Bella standing there, her face contorted with rage. How dare you? She hissed, pushing past me into the apartment. Bella, what? You turned them against me, she accused, whirling to face me. Franklin's filing for divorce. Did you know that? And now he's poisoning Jason's mind too. I didn't turn anyone against you, I said calmly, though my heart was racing. Franklin made his own decision based on what he discovered. Because you told him about the credit cards, about Vegas. You lied to your husband, Bella. You stole from your son's college fund. Those were your choices, not mine. She paced the small living room like a caged animal. He's trying to take everything, the house, full custody of Jason. He says I'm unstable. Me, after he abandoned our marriage at the first sign of trouble. Is that really how you see it? She stopped pacing, her eyes wild. What do you mean? Franklin didn't abandon your marriage. He's responding to years of deception. There's a difference. Oh, so you're on his side now? She spat. My own mother? I'm not on anyone's side, Bella. I'm just trying to see the situation clearly. She laughed bitterly. Right. That's why you're letting my son come over here, filling his head with who knows what. Jason asked to see me, I said, and we don't talk about you. I don't believe you. She glanced around the apartment with disdain. Look at this place. It's pathetic. You're living like some tragic victim when we both know you're sitting on millions. I took a deep breath. Money isn't everything, Bella. Easy for you to say. When you've got it! She exploded. Do you know what's happening to me? My life is falling apart! The bank called about the mortgage payment. My credit cards are maxed out, and now Franklin's threatening to expose everything in the divorce proceedings. I'm sorry you're struggling, I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, this was still my child. But I can't fix this for you. You could, she insisted, her voice dropping to something almost pleading. You could help me, Mom. Just this once. Alone. That's all I'm asking. I'll pay it back, I swear. For a moment, I wavered. The maternal instinct to protect, to make everything better, was powerful. But then I remembered the clothes scattered across the lawn, the cruel words, the years of manipulation. No, Bella, I said softly. I won't enable you anymore. Her face transformed, vulnerability replaced by cold fury. You'll regret this, she hissed. I'm not done fighting for what's mine. And when I win, don't expect any mercy from me. Is that really what your father and I raised you to be? I asked, my voice breaking slightly. Someone who threatens her own mother? Something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or a fleeting moment of self-awareness. But it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. You're the one who changed, she accused. You're the one who turned your back on family. As she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling. The encounter had left me shaken, but also strangely resolved. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about breaking a pattern that had persisted for too long. My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. Coffee this afternoon? I've got someone I'd like you to meet. I hesitated only briefly before typing back. I'd love to. It was time to start living my life again. Not as Bella's mother or Henry's widow, but as Rose, a woman with her own path still ahead of her. 6. Months can change everything. As spring blossoms brightened the city parks, I sat in Thomas Edward's office, finalizing the details of my estate plan. The winter had been long and difficult, but as the days gradually lengthened, so too had my sense of purpose grown stronger. Everything looks in order, Thomas said, sliding the documents across his desk. The trust for Jason is secure, the charitable foundation is established, and the conditions for Bella's portion are clearly outlined. I signed each page with careful deliberation. And it's ironclad? She can't contest it? Nothing is absolutely ironclad in law, Thomas admitted, but we've taken every precaution. The medical evaluations, the documented history of her behavior, her financial mismanagement. It would be extremely difficult for her to successfully challenge this. And Franklin's testimony would help if needed? Thomas nodded. His statement is powerful, as is Jason's, though I hope it doesn't come to that. I placed the pen down, a weight lifting from my shoulders. Thank you, Thomas, for everything. Henry would be proud of you, Rose, he said gently. You've honored his wishes while also finding your own path. As I left the office, spring sunshine warming my face, I thought about how much had changed since that terrible Sunday when Bella had thrown me out. The pain hadn't disappeared. I doubted it ever would completely, but it had transformed into something else, something that propelled me forward rather than holding me back. I walked the 3 blocks to the community college where, at 66, I had enrolled in a literature course. It had been Margaret's suggestion, a way to fulfill the dream I'd set aside after Henry died when raising Bella became my sole focus. "You're just in time," Professor Jenkins said as I slipped into the classroom. "We were about to discuss your paper on Jane Austen." My classmates, most young enough to be my grandchildren, turned to smile at me. Over the past months, I'd gone from being the old lady in the back row to just Rose, whose insights they respected and whose homemade cookies they eagerly anticipated each Thursday. After class, I checked my phone to find a message from Franklin. Jason got an A on his science project. He says he couldn't have done it without his grandmother's help. Dinner tonight to celebrate? I smiled, typing back a quick acceptance. My relationship with my grandson had blossomed in ways I'd never expected. 3 evenings a week, he came. To my apartment, sometimes with Franklin, sometimes alone, for homework help, cooking lessons, or simply to talk. He was the bridge that connected my past to my future, a reminder that family bonds could heal as well as hurt. Franklin, too, had become an unexpected ally. As his divorce from Bella progressed, he'd made it clear that I would always be Jason's grandmother, always welcome in their lives. His kindness had helped ease the ache of Bella's continued rejection. My last stop of the day was the coffee shop where I was meeting Margaret and Robert. The thought of Robert brought a smile to my face and a flutter to my heart that I hadn't felt in decades. I'd met him 4 months ago, Margaret's recently widowed brother-in-law, a retired English professor with kind eyes and a dry wit that matched my own. Our friendship had developed slowly, cautiously, both of us carrying the weight of past losses. "There she is," Robert said warmly as I approached their table. He stood to pull out my chair, a gentlemanly gesture that always made Margaret roll, her eyes good-naturedly. "How did the meeting with Thomas go?" Margaret asked, pushing a cup of tea toward me. She always ordered for me when I was running late. "Everything's settled," I replied. "It feels final." Robert's hand covered mine briefly. "Are you okay with that?" I nodded. "It's time. The property is being developed next month. The proceeds will fund everything we discussed: Jason's education, the Senior Advocacy Foundation, and yes, Bella's trust fund." "Has she tried to contact you?" Margaret asked. "Not directly. Franklin says she's been sober for 2 months now, attending therapy sessions as part of their custody arrangement. After Bella's last explosive visit to my apartment, things had spiraled further. She'd lost her job, been arrested for a DUI, and finally hit the rock bottom that forced her to confront her issues with money, alcohol, and relationships. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago, with Franklin receiving primary custody of Jason. "Do you think she'll accept the conditions of the trust?" Robert asked. I sipped my tea thoughtfully. "I don't know, but they're non-negotiable. She gets a monthly stipend, but the bulk of her portion remains in trust unless she maintains sobriety and completes financial counseling." "You're doing the right thing," Margaret assured me. "It's tough love, but it's still love." Later that evening, as Franklin, Jason, and I celebrated over pizza at my now cozy apartment, my phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. "Mom, I'd like to talk." "When you're ready." "Bella." I showed it to Franklin, whose eyebrows rose in surprise. "That's unexpected." "She's been doing better," Jason offered cautiously. "My therapist says we might try supervised visits soon." I nodded, tucking the phone away. I would respond to Bella, but not tonight. Tonight was for celebration. for the family that had reformed from the ashes of betrayal. After they left, I sat on my small balcony, watching the city lights twinkle against the darkening sky. Robert had invited me to join him for a weekend trip to the coast next month, my first vacation in years. The senior advocacy foundation I'd established with part of Henry's property proceeds was already helping others who had experienced elder abuse. And next week, I would begin volunteering at the community center, teaching a writing class for seniors. My life, which had seemed shattered beyond repair 6 months ago, had reassembled itself into something new, something that was entirely mine. The phone in my lap buzzed again. Robert. Thinking of you. Sleep well, Rose. I smiled, typing back a response. Then I glanced at Bella's earlier message, still unanswered. With careful thought, I composed a reply. I'm ready to listen when you're ready to talk. Coffee next week? Whatever came next with my daughter, reconciliation, rejection, or something in between, I would face it on my own terms. The woman, who had stood weeping on a front lawn, watching her clothes being thrown onto the grass, no longer existed. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and finally, truly free. As I prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror, the silver hair I'd stopped dyeing, the laugh lines I'd stopped trying to hide, the clear eyes that had seen both, heartbreak and healing. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, I recognized myself. We did it, Henry, I whispered to the quiet room. We found our way through. The path ahead would have its challenges. Bella's recovery was fragile. My relationship with Robert was new, and rebuilding family bonds took time. But I was no longer afraid. Whatever came, I would meet it with the quiet strength I'd discovered within myself, the strength that had been there all along, waiting to emerge. The last smile of Rose wasn't a final farewell, but a beginning. The start of a life reclaimed, a heart renewed, and a spirit unbroken. In the morning, I would wake to possibilities I'd never imagined 6 months ago. I would continue building this new life, piece by piece, day by day. And I would do it knowing that the greatest inheritance I could leave behind wasn't money or property, but the example of a woman who had learned, even at 66, that it's never too late to stand up, to start over, to find joy. That was Henry's true legacy. And now, finally, it was mine as well. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below, and meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.